Next up, we have a panel on an issue that is a personal issue for many of us, the future of work defined. Chairing the panel, we have Matthew Taylor, Senior Correspondent of Cnbc. Please welcome the panel to the stage. Thank you very much.
Stay well hydrated here.
Yeah, get stuck into the water first, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, stay well hydrated.
All right, welcome. Hi, everyone. My name's Matt Taylor. I am a senior correspondent and anchor at CNBC here in Singapore. Shameless plug, I host the afternoon show from 12 noon, so make sure you tune into that going forward. But today we are discussing the future of work redefined. And let me just run you through our panel before we kick off here. We have George Wang with us here from Singapore Airlines, from the information technology side of things. From the Salesforce team, the Senior Vice President for APAC, Renzo Taal, is joining us as well. We have Giulia Baiocchi, Director of Sales and Operations for Southeast Asia at Branch, which, if you didn't know what that is, deep linking. So correct me if I'm wrong, but those ads that you see on Instagram when you're scrolling through your feed, you might have something to do with those, if I'm not mistaken. And finally, Luke McNeal, Director of Workplace APAC at Facebook. Now, we've been doing some broadcasts throughout the course of the day here on CNBC, and just before we wrapped up this afternoon, I made the observation earlier when I was talking about the panel that we would be having later on today, what the future of work redefined really meant. And I was joking with one of my colleagues that I hoped in the future it would mean a 4-day work week. I'm probably not going to be correct on that, but then again, am I? Of course, rapid changes in technology, globalisation, operating 24 hours a day really is the future of work going forward. But I thought I might start by just getting the panel's views on what they think the future of work is, given this environment that we're in, where we have rapid changes in technology, companies operate across borders more and more so, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Luke, I might start off with you.
Yeah, I think every organization that is trying to achieve the future of work, what that looks like, is really around how do you reduce the distance within any organization? How do teams be able to communicate and collaborate more effectively than they do today? And so the role of technology, whether it's 24/7 because we're global dispersed teams, really is all around trying to understand how do they work more efficiently together. How do you put the tools and the data and the information that folks need to be able to get their job done more efficiently? And that really is going to trigger the innovation of the next chapter in the future of work.
Okay, Giulia, what do you reckon?
So I believe that it's a lot about innovation and learning continuously and leveraging all the new technology that really help to be closer at global level. So for instance, we are all global companies. We have offices all over the place. And nowadays, thanks to Slack and many other technologies, it's much easier to communicate. At the same time, being local is still hyper important. So I think it's going to be always a combination about innovation and localization. And that's pretty much the approach that we're having as well in Branch.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, so Matt, first of all, the 4-day work week is already there. Just come to Europe. Being European, we can sort it out.
Exactly.
So, but if you look at the 4-day, or if you look at kind of the future work, particularly the things which are impacting things are like the fourth industrial revolution, and where new technology is kind of changing the way people are needing to learn. And this is everything to do with learning, unlearning, reskilling, getting yourself ready for the future. And I always think around kind of, when I started in the workforce 20 years ago, there were these cool new jobs called webmaster. And if you look at today, right, you think, okay, well, that's a long time ago, but you have new jobs, like if you think around AI, like AI auditor or transformation manager. So there's so many new jobs going to be created. So I think it's an exciting time. And actually, if you look at some of the stats from World Economic Forum, they're saying that 113 million new jobs are going to be created in the next coming 4 years. Now, a lot of these jobs and a lot of other jobs are going to move off, like 75 million. But net, they're going to be new jobs. So the question is, how do we get ready? How do you get your workforce ready? And how do you learn to participate in this new exciting era?
Yeah, we'll pose those questions in a moment. But George, what do you think the future of work is? We had an interesting conversation about part of that earlier on today.
Yeah. I think other than the nature of work is changing, so what kind of work you do is changing because of the technology disruption. I also observe two more things. One is the mode of work is changing. So the organization, the people become more self-organized, autonomous organization in an agile way. So the nature, the mode of work is changing. The other thing is also the expectation, the motivation of the work is changing. The new generation of workers are much more inspired by passion, by what they believe for. So these are two key things changing, which will bring a different change other than just the nature of work changing.
Okay, well, with that in mind, how do you harness that in a workplace? How does a business harness someone's passion as opposed to, we've been talking about new technologies coming in, artificial intelligence. What if there is a workforce that's quite old and has been used to doing things a certain way? How do you capture, as a business, wanting to help people that want to succeed, do a good job, but then also allay concerns from older people in the workforce that feel as though they may be becoming obsolete because they think that their job is being replaced by technology, for instance?
So we believe, we want to bring everybody on board. The trend is leaving, but we want everybody on board. So we have three key strategies. One is we want to train everybody in terms of new skill set. Basic skill set in the three areas, in terms of data, in terms of agile, and in terms of design thinking to focus on customer. So for all the Singapore Airlines ground staff, not the flying crew, the ground staff, everybody is being trained on the basic things, on these three modules. So we're halfway through. Our ambition is by end of next year, everybody will be trained. The second thing is we want to let people to bring their ideas, but not just bring their ideas and throw that at the other departments, but bring their ideas, what we call the people-led innovation. Let our employee to put their idea forward, but also to create an environment and create a facility for them to realize their ideas. So we have the Digital Innovation Blueprint, and we created the Digital Innovation Lab. And a key part of the Digital Innovation Lab is really to bring the people's idea through a funnel process to bring them into fruition. So in the last 15 months, we have 300 ideas from the people submitted, and 50 of them have already gone through the POC stage. We have demo day, demo to our CEO and the senior management, and 10 of them are being implemented into the real business. And the third way is really the agile organization, to create agile mindset, to allow people to have this autonomous organization to help us to do things faster and better.
Well, I think what you mentioned there, George, was really interesting, is that is all been able to generate from developing a culture that allows people, regardless of what generation they come from, to be able to engage in an open and a safe spot. And when we think about the future of work, it's how organizations define that culture and be able to have a clear mission and value, regardless if there's someone new into the workforce or they've been there for a long time, to be able to change and adapt with that. Gallup ran a study, 84% of all employees worldwide are considered disengaged. And in fact, 60%, according to the World Health Organization, 60% of employees cite stress or mental disorder as a result. And that actually has an impact of $1 trillion on productivity worldwide. And so how do you create a culture, like you just mentioned here, that folks are able to surface those ideas, be able to celebrate, to usher in what's new for an existing business, just like a startup would be doing in their field?
I just want to pick up before we get a response from the other guys, but how do you also manage the other side of the equation there, particularly from a company like Facebook? I suppose compared to Singapore Airlines, Facebook has a very young workforce. A lot of people that have work at Singapore Airlines for their entire lives through various different departments. But then how do you manage that on the flip side when you have a millennial workforce that wants everything now and wants to do the job, wants to complete it, wants to move up, wants to progress quite rapidly vis-a-vis a workforce like Singapore Airlines where people might understand that perhaps you have to do your time first before you can then progress further through the company?
I actually think it's actually more similar than it is different. And for that, we are very much at Facebook a mission-driven organization. And so regardless of someone millennial, new into the workforce, or super ambitious and has grown their careers over a longer time horizon, it's really making sure that people clearly understand what is the mission that we're all a part of trying to accomplish. And through that, then, we can create those opportunities for people to be able to build, we like to call them building the white space, right? There, as an organization, we feel like we're 1% done on our mission. And so there's plenty of opportunities to be able to engage folks and their creativity to be able to build the next set of great products and features across Facebook, including workplace and the family of apps.
Yeah, Giulia, what do you think? Because I imagine that your workforce is kind of in a similar vein to what Facebook has.
Yeah, definitely. And I also believe that we can't resist innovation. There is only one way forward, which is embracing it. And it applies to any level. And I believe that it's a lot about education, and it's about, as well, leveraging people skills. Because more and more is going to be automated by technology, but there are certain things that are very people-focused, which is what I believe we have to invest into, to maintain our companies, to make our company competitive, and to also make our people part of these competitive companies.
So I think we are always very focused around all the workers, right? And I think it is absolutely right that we need to kind of understand how we can make sure that nobody is left behind. But even like a company of ours, where we have a lot of kind of young workers and kind of from different age groups, we see that their jobs will be impacted by 2025. Right, so the World Economic Forum is saying that 54% of those jobs will change. So it's not just one category which is going to be affected; it's basically everybody. And therefore, you go back to this kind of this mantra around learning, unlearning, and reskilling. And if we look at that, for instance, we did some research ourselves here in Asia from Salesforce, and we kind of asked them and said, first of all, are you willing to learn these new skill sets, and how eager are you willing? And the interesting insights are people are really willing to learn, but they don't know how. So I think it's really a responsibility for companies and actually industry. I mean, we as a company, we design a lot of these new technologies. And that means that we have an intrinsic responsibility as Salesforce to make sure that people are not left behind. Old, young, whatever they come from a demographics perspective. So I think that's a question which we definitely need to make sure gets answered. So what we've done is we've built this free learning platform because we're very worried around people left behind, where everybody can reskill themselves, they can be part of this new era, this new economy, and independent if they're young, old, or where they come from, they're able to participate.
Whose responsibility is it then for that learning, unlearning situation that we're talking about? Is it company-wide? You're talking about employees need to be with the company on a journey. They want the company to succeed. But is this a top-down approach? Is it a bottom-up approach? Is it changing the whole culture within the company? What have been your experiences? And who do you think ultimately is responsible for driving those changes within the company? Anyone? Well, it's up for grabs this time.
So maybe I start first. I think it has to be started with the top down as a culture change, but there is a personal responsibility. So I always take the metaphor as, transformation like a train leaving the station. We want to get everybody on the train, but whether you want to be on the train or not, it's a personal decision. So while we can do all the things, and I think companies need to start to think about how do we retrain workers, reskilling, upskilling the workers, provide the time, opportunity, and the courses to do this. But ultimately, individuals have to take the initiative to do this because they have a choice whether they want to do it or not.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of three factors, right? So you got companies, organizations. It's fundamentally, I think it is probably the most important question to answer is like, you as a company, you have the responsibility to offer and work with your staff and your teams to take them along that journey. The second part is industry, and that's us. And that's making sure that we are making sure that there's no inequality, where nobody's left behind. We all take them on board. We all give them access to be part of this new future. And the third one is, I think, to George's point, is around the individual. You can't do that all by itself. Something which I'm super encouraged around here in Singapore is something initiative called Skills Future, and where the government is kind of helping to make sure that people are being able to reskill, taking those opportunities. So it's not a very straight answer, but I would say companies, industries, individuals, and everybody has a role to play.
Yeah, just to add, I believe it's two ways. For sure, companies have to invest on this to retain, attract, and cultivate talent. If a company wants to be competitive, it has to do this. At the same time, I believe that is a lot about individual choice as well. We have to educate ourselves, because otherwise the world is moving at such a fast pace. There is so much going on, so much innovation. We have to embrace it as well at an individual level to be able to leverage our own skill as well. So I believe it's really two ways.
Yeah, look, the world has changed and is going to continue to change. And so, in the old world, we would have had a very clear delineation of how we progress our careers. And Renzo, I really like how you've thought about learning, unlearning, and building new skills, because I think that's what a lot of times I spend time coaching very talented individuals to think of. How are you going to build the skill sets that are going to put you in the position to be able to accomplish those new opportunities as they come? And they're not there today, and that's hard to change the way you think. Instead of just, I want to get that next promotion, or I want to become a people manager, or what have you, but thinking really, what are the skills that are allowing me to be successful and put in a position to be able to take on larger responsibilities that are aligned with my career expectations. And that might be a role that doesn't exist today. And that's a different mindset than before. And I think to your point around the organization's responsibility is to help guide, but provide that framework that allows those individuals to tap into their creativity as they go through this self-awareness journey to also be able to identify where they can have the most impact within their organization.
What about those that are left behind? Sorry, you just wanted to pick up another point.
Yeah, so I want to give an example, and everybody knows kind of the ATMs, right? Automatic teller machines. And when 30 years plus ago the ATMs were being introduced, that meant there was a huge amount of people where their jobs were just being displaced very quickly by automation. And what happened was these organizations retrained them, and it became financial advisors. So it is about taking those people along on those journeys and reskilling them and repurposing them. And that's exactly what's happening now. We're in this fourth industrial revolution. AI is here. AI is not coming. No, it's already here. And we need to make sure that we have kind of the ATM, that transition for all these jobs as well. And it's exciting. There are great new jobs to be done there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go back to that point then, those that are left behind. Luke, you were just talking before about disengagement of the workforce, lack of productivity, and you ran through some pretty interesting statistics, so you might want to repeat them if people didn't catch them. But those that are disengaged, those that don't want to get on board with what the company is doing, whether it is technological change, whether it's using AI and the like, what do they do? Because from the statistics that you're pointing out, it appears as though it's actually a fairly large portion of the workforce.
Yeah, one of the things that we're really focused on is ensuring those, particularly that are deskless, right? Frontline staff, people that are not knowledge workers, making sure that even though they may be deskless, they're not voiceless. And we ran a bunch of research in North America as well as in Europe that people felt connected to the people that they worked with, their colleagues. 90% of people felt connected to the people that they interact with each and every day, but only 15% felt like they were connected with their headquarters. And so that, I think, is a real telling factor to that disengagement that happens. And if they don't feel like they're connected to that mission that we spoke of, which is so important as a bedrock, then it's going to be really challenging to be able to harness the creativity on that. And so, I think there is that responsibility for all organizations to be able to support those to continue to build their skill sets, even if that's rapidly changing. And I think that's an area where we spend a lot of time thinking of how can we help to reduce that distance, because I think it's got to start with that culture and communication. And if it doesn't, then we're not going to be able to solve that, as I mentioned, 84% of workforce worldwide being disengaged.
I think at some extent technology makes things a bit more difficult on a personal level and in terms of an engagement as well, right? Because as you were mentioning, people that actually work together, physically together, tend to be more engaged, while when you have technology in the middle, you might be more efficient superficially, but you might be missing out on the real people engagement. So I think it's important to keep in mind that we are human, and we have to pay attention to the human element and make sure that we create situations in which people can really engage and feel part of the company and feel married to the company mission.
Anyone else want to add to that? Because I wanted to bring up another point based on that, if no one had anything else to add on that, and that is education. Do you think we need to rethink the way that people, before they join the workforce, going forward then, are educated? Because now you do whatever it is, a 3 or a 4-year university degree, college degree, if you want to go down that road, and you usually emerge as a very specialized individual. But given that technology, for instance, is rapidly changing, what you might study, say now, is likely going to be obsolete in 3 or 4 years. Do you think we need to rethink the way that people are educated before they enter the workforce? Renzo?
I think absolutely yes. And I actually, once again, I have to think back on my own study times. So when I graduated from university and got my MBA, some of the stuff which I was learning was actually obsolete. I mean, it was all in technology. For those out there, we had IDE connections. I can tell you in 2000, that was not the coolest thing. So yes, I think it is very important that you need to constantly keep learning, and that comes back to this responsibility individually. And even, personally, I need to do it, right? Now, I have the privilege to be working at a very interesting, recognized technology innovating company. But even for me, I have to constantly think around how do I keep present? How do I keep there? How do I make sure I'm looking at the latest technology and also develop skills? Because I really like what you brought up around are hard skills or soft skills are going to be important. I think with a lot of the technology changes as a consequence of this fourth industrial revolution are going to be automated. So the human is going to be more important around the connections. There's a human and a person behind every single device. So the skills what we need to learn are not always the hard skills, it's the soft skills and the personal interaction skills, which are probably going to be as important moving forward.
I absolutely agree. I think we need to have a mindset of continuous learning, a lifelong learning. Education should not stop just because you graduate from the university. it has to be continuous learning. If you have this continuous learning mindset, then we will have a better society. And this requires, I think, probably a concerted effort and a partnership between the government, the education institutes, the company, and the individuals to work together to change that mindset and to offer the opportunities to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, as you described, kind of the old view of education being that you become very specialized at the end of that. You get your diploma, your degree, your master's, what have you. And I think what I observe is those that are most impactful and set themselves up for the future of work are those that build the underlying foundational skills, communication skills, ability to critically think, be able to adapt to different situations, being aware, being open. You know, those are kind of personal, interpersonal skills, and then ultimately professional skill sets that become the bedrock. And then on top of that, you are able to then layer that functional experience that comes in to be able to be specialized. And that was what I see with, again, a very young workforce that is at Facebook, those that are really able to excel in an organization that is moving very, very fast are those that underlying have those foundational skills and then are able to then apply those critical thinking skills and those experiences to be able to build as we rapidly change.
Yeah, I totally agree with Luke. I think education should be about building the foundation and learning to learn so that we can develop the skills and have the dynamism of applying the skills to very different situations. At the same time, we can probably do something to bring education a bit more up to date because obviously things are innovating pretty quickly. And when I think I'm from Italy, and Italy has an extremely traditional education, which sometimes is very far away from the reality, you know, of the jobs that you get even after university, after school. So I think that there is definitely a gap there that can be fulfilled, so that we can learn skills that are easier to adapt in the workplace. But the core of it is about building foundation. It's like a gym, right? We are training and building the core to be ready to embrace different situations.
I wanted to then bring this back to something a little bit more topical then. It's all great in theory, be as diversified as you can, for instance, in your workplace. Yeah, have a broad sense, want to get ahead, work hard, follow what the company's doing, embrace what the company's doing. Yet over the last several years or so, people may well have been doing that, but they're actually not getting paid anymore. We've seen globally wages stagnating. Yes, that's an effect of course, the global economy coming out of the financial crisis almost or about a decade or so ago. But how then do workers, of course talking about the future of work redefined, approach the compensation side of the equation? Because clearly people work to be able to make a living. So with all of this in mind, and as we look ahead to what the future of work is going to look like, how do you think negotiating, navigating your pay and compensation is going to change or alter, given that we live in an environment where we aren't seeing growth in wages as we have over the last 2 or 3 decades, for instance? Who wants a stab at that one? Because that's coming out of left field a little bit.
Well, I think so. So of course, pay is always very important. But what you see is much more purpose-based work. And you know, if you look at some of if you look at kind of the opportunity there is really around what are companies doing for society. And if you look at, for instance, Salesforce, one of our 4 key values is equality: equal pay, equal right, and equal opportunity. And across the board, when we found out that there was a discrepancy between exactly the same job between a man and a female, our CEO took action and said that's not equality. So it's these values. It's about the values about being able to give back to communities, right? So we have 7 working days where you can give back to the communities, you can participate in communities, you can listen to the communities. Right here, I mean, in Singapore, we had 40,000 volunteering hours spending Salesforce time giving back and connecting society. So yes, wages are important, but it's around being a purpose company and having a purpose and having values which are going to make the difference.
Okay.
My thinking is the mode of work will also change in the sense that you will see the trends that there are more free agents. So instead of working for a company full-time, you may work for a specific purpose or a specific project for a period of time, and you become a free agent to that work. So much more self-organized, purpose-driven, autonomous working units, which dynamically change. And in this way, you also will be able to negotiate your value and your compensation accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, I want to pick up on what Renzo said earlier around, first we've got to solve for gender pay inequality. And I know at Facebook we work very, very hard to take out the conscious and unconscious bias out of when we recruit new individuals into an organization to really make sure that we've got equal pay for equal jobs. It's something that's fundamental, and we still have got a lot of work to do as an economy to be able to get there. And that's the first thing that we've got to solve for. Through there, I agree that we need to be able to, and for folks out there looking to understand how to increase wages of, what's the value proposition that you're going to provide to the organization, again, given the constructs of what we've been discussing here, and the value that's going to be created through your participation, whether it be as a free agent or whether that be in a new area of innovation or what have you. And ultimately, linking the work and the effort that you're putting forward into the value created back for the organization to be able to derive, compelling conversation around compensation.
I don't think I have much to add. I think it was pretty exhaustive.
Well, let's talk about, we're almost out of time, but let's talk about the free agent model then. And how much does the sharing economy have to do with the way that employment is going to change going forward? Because we're living in this environment now where, depending which app or which service you want to use, you're able to work. You could be a Grab driver or an Uber driver on top of already working. Do you see that kind of mix becoming more commonplace going forward as we talk about the future of work?
So I think technology is having a huge impact, for sure, right? So if you look at, I think, of course, the analogy around being urbanized is becoming an old one, but the reality is technology shifts the way we're able to engage, the way, social, kind of, how you become social, how you can share, and that's going to have a huge impact in kind of the economy and the workforce as well. So we see it coming for sure, and I think it's exciting. I think it is, but you need to have the right skill sets in order to participate in that workforce. And I think to George's point, people will start to shift between projects, purpose, and yeah, maybe they won't stay with a certain kind of company for a longer time. So the only question is, how do we kind of re-engage these employees constantly? How do you become a destination company without being kind of one job for one person for their life?
From company point of view, we have to be prepared to be able to engage in that new mode of working. So for example, we start our Chris Lab at the Innovation Lab. It tries to engage these kind of startups, how to work with the startups in this kind of mode, which is much more difficult working as a normal vendor with a big organization. So that's how we try to prepare ourselves to think about how we work with this mode.
Yeah, I believe we are breaking a lot of barriers, traditional barriers that define corporates and individuals, and everything is becoming extremely dynamic. It's going to be interesting to see how we're going to face it as society, right? Because, for instance, there is this floating workforce that in reality doesn't belong to companies, right? They are servicing the company. They could be work for some company some days, some other company other days. So I think it's an extremely interesting trend, which is adding a lot of value to the system, to the companies. But I think that they also raised some interesting question on how we are going to define the workforce, are we going to include these people in the workforce? What is going to be the future of these people in terms of pension funds and so on? So I think it really opens up some long-term question from a society point of view.
I love the potential of the gig economy. I think we've just seen the first chapter of it. I think we're going to continue to see that evolve over the next 10, 15 years. What I love about it is being able to connect folks in a much more individualized way to the work that they're passionate of, and to be able to deliver services and create value for their customers, whether that's through an app today or what the future may look like on that, on their own time schedule. I don't think, however, that we've figured out how that works for everyone in the gig economy, to be clear. And that's why I say that this is only the first chapter, version 1. It's clear that there's still a lot of work that we all need to, in society and in the economy, figure out how everyone can win and be sustainable in a much more of a free agent type model, right, in a gig economy. And so I think we're going to see a lot of iterations on this space, but being able to effectively solve for market inefficiencies is a really exciting opportunity, and one I think we're going to see drastically change over the next 10 years.
Okay, we're almost out of time, so we've got 30 seconds left for everyone. Fast forward 20 years, what do you think the future of work is going to look like? Are we going to see equal pay for equal work? Are we going to see the 4-day week, as I lamented at the start of this segment? We'll start down, Luke, with you.
I'm going to go a different direction, and I apologize, George, but I think we're going to see the increase of technology and social presence. And so really excited about some of the work that is being done in the industry around AR and VR, and what impact that has to reducing the distance with organizations. And then a little bit further down the road, holograms, right? And do we create a social presence of being together when we are geographically dispersed? I'm really excited about that part.
Okay, Giulia.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's going to be a lot about technology innovation. So technology could get to the point in which it's really bridging the gap, the human gap that we are still suffering at this stage. And if that's the case, we could even see more decentralization, right? It could be an interesting evolution, because if technology can really bring us together, then maybe we won't have reason to live or work as close as we have today.
So I think if I would have made a prediction 5 years ago, I would be absolutely wrong. So I'm not going to make a prediction for the next 5 years. What I do know is we're in a very exciting time. It's unique to be now in 2019, and we're in the middle of this fourth industrial revolution. That doesn't come about that often. So what we will see is faster, bigger changes. Absolutely. So, you know, if it's robotics, if it's kind of VR, if it's like medicine, there will be massive impacts, and technology is going to be the heart and the center. The one thing which I just kind of would say to everybody is, make sure you have a beginner's mind. Be there, embrace it, and try and take your responsibility in this new future.
I think the technology is an enabler, and people have to understand that the lifelong learning is a mindset change, and people have to embrace that, not just on the individual level, but in the organizational level and the international level.
Great. Everyone, thank our panel for a very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.